My name is Harnish. I'm the CEO of Great Castle Security. I'm seeing some familiar faces out here. I'm hoping to open a few minds. I got two things that I really want to cover today. One is some career advice based on my experience and having been in cybersecurity for a little bit of time at this point. And then secondarily, a couple of tips if you decide to ignore my advice. And we'll see where it goes from there. So, Great Castle Security, we are one of the largest cybersecurity consulting firms. We're headquartered in Troy, New York. We have an office here. We are opening offices in Boston and Philadelphia in the next 9 months or so. And one of the things we do is pen testing. And that term is probably familiar to this crowd here. It's a small part of what we do, largely because of where the industry is and based on client demand and a whole bunch of other things, which I'm going to talk about today. We've learned a couple of things about this. Pen testing is not what we all think it is. I think for our clients, when they hear pen testing, it sounds sexy, very James Bondy. They don't always get out of it what they expect to, and so there are questions about that. Yet there is a room full of people here who are interested in pen testing. And my guess is that everyone who's not in this room here at this conference is probably interested in pen testing also. But they read the title and decided it was a waste of time. So what I'm here to do today is I'm hoping to provide a little bit of career advice in the sense that there's a lot outside of pen testing and cybersecurity. In fact, what I'd argue is if I look at what we do for our clients, 150 active clients, we have clients in every state, things are going well. Very few of them benefit from a pen test. Now, that's not necessarily to demonize pen testing itself, because it is a valuable practice. But the reality is where we are today, we're in build mode. We're not in break mode. We're already broken. And so I'm going to provide a few of my thoughts around pen testing and where I think you guys should probably consider, I'm hoping you'll consider, largely because we're hiring, things I'll hope you'll consider when you leave this room. So the first is this. As I mentioned, the vast majority of our clients today do not benefit from a pen test. Why do you think that is? They already know it's broken. So us coming in and making Swiss cheese of a network doesn't add a whole lot of value. In fact, we know that if we conduct a pen test in 1 week, the results may be completely different the next week, the following week, and the following week, because it's a very organic process. It also depends on their people, their process, who's called in sick that day, the applications, the data, who they're maybe potentially connected to temporarily. There's a lot of things that go into a pen test to make it as real as possible. Unfortunately, making it as real as possible means very little today because it's only real for a point in time. Secondarily, most of them have not invested in a cybersecurity program to the point where it's worth testing, right? So if I come and smash your mailbox tonight, and you wake up in the morning and it's smashed, and I say, hey, I smashed your mailbox last night, what are you going to say? Maybe. You might. You say, well, I knew you could smash my mailbox. It was sitting out at the end of my driveway. I don't watch my mailbox, and I don't care about my mailbox. So I'm telling you something you already know. And that's what happens today in the vast majority of pen tests, is you get to the results. So if you're working backwards from results, you hand them a findings document, you talk about vulnerabilities that were exploited, you talk about the people who fell to social engineering, you talk about which assets were compromised. You go through a whole list of really detailed and interesting things. The problem is when they look at the findings, they say, well, yeah, no kidding. I knew all that. There's just not a whole lot new because they've probably already been compromised, whether it was ransomware or some intrusion or loss of data, a lost, stolen laptop. They've already had these problems, and they know that they're vulnerable to them, and they know that these things are impactful. And they might even know how impactful in some cases. So now the question becomes, well, if this doesn't work, if this isn't helpful, what do we do? And so I'm asking you guys that question. Number two, right, everyone in this room wants to be a pen tester today. What happens, right, this is economics, not cybersecurity. What happens when there's an oversupply to the demand? Well, the price goes down, and then beyond that, commoditization. Right? If you were to go out and buy a toilet today, and I mean this seriously, if you were to go out and buy a toilet today, which toilet would you buy? Yeah, you don't care. You don't care what toilet you buy. It's a toilet. It does the same thing that every other toilet does. Now, I believe that there are probably deluxe toilets out there somewhere, but they're hard to find because it still looks like a toilet. I'm encouraging you to think about your future, right? Think about your career. If you want to add value, if you want to make money, if you want to be in demand, well, don't go where the supply is. Go somewhere else, right? Go to where the demand is high and the supply is low. Now, you could argue in cybersecurity, there is no supply, and I would at least temporarily agree with you in the sense that there are, I think, 500,000 open cybersecurity jobs in this country right now. Some of those are pen testers, no doubt. People are looking for pen testers, and you can get a job today. In 3 years, where do you think that's going to be? Well, I see a room full of pen testers here and probably not a single risk assessor. Where do you think the demand is going? Where do you think the supply is going? So think about that. The next is this. Okay, let's try a little experiment. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to name as many famous pen testers as you can. I'm going to give you 4 or 5 of them. Tyler Wrightson. He's not famous, I'm kidding. Hadnacky, Kennedy, right? Johnny Law. I mean, the list goes on and on. We could all name a dozen famous pen testers today. Okay, here's the real experiment. Name me one famous risk assessor, or a famous awareness trainer, right? Or a famous ISO. Go ahead. You can't. Well, if you want fame, if you want to make a name for yourself, if you want a brand, well, you're not going to go into pen testing because that's done. Like those guys are already established, Nickerson and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we all know who they are. And I'm not saying they're good or bad or have anything to do with this presentation. What I'm saying is that fame is not in pen testing anymore. We're already doing that. We're already breaking stuff. We're breaking stuff. We've been breaking stuff for a long time. If you want to make a name for yourself, if you want to create a brand and create value around you and your career, do something else. There's plenty of pen testers. Here's another problem, is that there are no accepted standards in pen testing. And that's the serious reality. You could argue there's some fledgling startups out there that provide some structure around active testing and social engineering and those kinds of things, but the reality is there's no standards. You can check NIST, you can check SANS, you can check the Google. There just aren't any. Even PTES, right? It's like, who's using that today? It's a great attempt at something that is completely unstandardized today. What the problem is with that is, if there's no finish line, if you can't define the race, how do you know who won? How do you know it was faster than the other runner? Right? How do you know your pen test was more valuable or more effective than someone else's if you can't measure it? If there's no measurement, there's no winning, there's no success. And so now you're sort of behind, you're going to do a pen test for a client or for your own organization, and now you're already struggling to figure out, well, how do I explain this to a CEO or a CFO who's paying my invoice about what I just did and the value that I created? And he says, well, you know, what's this thing worth to us? What does it mean? Try explaining that. Now compare that to reductions in human behavior, you know, people risk, susceptibility, risk. I mean, these things have been standardized since the 60s or 70s. Like, we understand them. Now, you could also argue that therein lies the opportunity, right? Is that the standards aren't created, so I'm going to go standardize that. And I say, absolutely, go for it. But today, there's very little measurement, consistent measurement in pen testing. And so it's hard to win. It's hard to even finish sometimes. Here's another one, is that, without exposing too many details, I just came from a client not too far from here who is currently suffering one of the largest ransomware attacks in ransomware history. It's national news. They are a major organization, thousands of employees, and I spoke with the CEO 2 hours ago, and he said, you know what, I'm kind of tired of this. My people have been working 24/7 for weeks now. I've got regulators calling, I've got auditors calling. I just want to get back to business. He's tired of being afraid. So this is a little bit of an abstract concept in the sense that if you are out selling pen tests, and pen tests make CEOs afraid, do you think they want to buy your stuff? Even if they need it, do you think they're going to buy your stuff? It's like exercise. I go to a doctor, my doctor tells me I'm 10 pounds overweight, ate too many burgers, don't get enough exercise. And he says, you need to live a healthier lifestyle. That's going to reduce the risk of heart attack for you. it. Okay, yeah, I know that. What do you think I do when I leave his office? Yeah, I hit the Wendy's drive-thru because I've got a lot of work to do. I was just in his office for 2 hours, and now I got to go catch up. So I'm going to sit at my desk for the rest of the afternoon. And the reason I don't get on the treadmill is because I know I can't get off. I know that being healthy is a lifestyle change. I know that it's never done. And that's just like cybersecurity. And it's just like pen testing. It's never done. And so when you introduce a human being to something that's difficult, misunderstood, maybe a little painful at times, even though the benefits are well understood, they're not immediate, right? The immediate reaction is pain, right? I'm tired, I'm winded, I got sore quads, whatever it is. And that's the same thing. CEOs are getting a little bit tired. It's like they're scared enough by auditors and hackers today. They don't need to be scared by you. It's like they're done. There's a little bit of fatigue going on right now in pen testing because people are tired of being afraid. They're tired of, even if what you present to them is really quantified information on vulnerabilities and exploits and pivoting and all that stuff is good, but it doesn't matter because they don't want to see it. They don't want to hear it. They're tired of the treadmill. We're seeing a lot of CEOs today not even wanting to have that conversation because they're just sick of it. They're human beings, and that's just the nature of this. And so if you are on the side of, or if part of your job is selling pen tests and scary things, you're going to have a much more difficult time doing that. So who can remember the first thing we did in cyber, right? So when cybersecurity became a term probably, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago max, what was the first thing that we jumped on as a service provider? As the thing that we wanted to, the thing that we did to sort of prove an organization's risk or lack of risk? What do you think we did? Did we do risk assessments? No. What did we do? Well, we started breaking more stuff. We started doing pen testing. So here's the thing. Today, all of you watch the Kardashians, right? You follow them on Twitter. Today, my wife watches the Kardashians. She follows them on Twitter. She listens to their podcasts, their Snapchats, etc. In 2 years, she's going to forget about the Kardashians because she's a human being. And we, as human beings, we need constant stimulation. And that's just the way it is. We have a very short attention span. Well, what we did first was pen testing. So what do you think is going to fall off the list, the exciting list first? Well, the Kardashians. I should hope the Kardashians. The first thing that's going to fall off this list of interesting, important things is pen testing, because we've been doing it a long time. How many of you are actually bored of pen testing? Yeah, it's happening. Okay, well, that's one more than there would have been last year. We're getting bored of pen testing. And so are our clients, by the way. It's like one more thing. It's going to come in, expose vulnerabilities, give them a list of things to do, scare the CEO. It's like it's just getting kind of boring. Contrast that now with things that we have made very little progress in. You want to be awesome? Go figure out how to meaningfully and in a lasting way change user behavior. Somebody in this audience figures out how to get people to stop clicking links or opening attachments or even reporting mistakes that they've made. You guys will be rich, I promise you, and you'll be famous, and CEOs will want to talk to you. But meanwhile, right now, pen testers come in and they're trying to sell their stuff, and they're being relegated to IT because it sounds very technical, right? And meanwhile, the risk assessor's out playing golf with the CEO, right? That's just the nature of this. And this has nothing to do with pen testing. This has to do with the fact that we're all human beings and we have a short attention span. Here's another thing, is that because it is, or it's not, but it appears to be technical, or when someone talks about pen testing, first of all, they don't even know the difference between that and a vulnerability scan typically, but it all sounds very technical to me. And so I have a very small audience. Right? So when you go in to sell a pen test to a top 20 bank or to a level 1 trauma center or a major university, you want to sell pen tests, oh, you should talk to IT. Well, no, I don't want to talk to IT. Pen testing is actually a business solution, and this is a business problem, but the perception is that pen testing is very technical, right? And so meanwhile, the risk assessors who are talking about compliance, or the awareness trainers who are talking about thousands of employees, and they're talking to HR and risk and compliance and the executive team about buying stuff. Well, guess who writes checks? It ain't IT. It ain't the IT director. They don't write checks. Another reason to get out of pen testing and into something else is this, right? If you want long-term, lasting careers or invoicing, so to speak, you're going to have to look outside pen testing, because right now, at least temporarily, you're being relegated to an audience that is much smaller and two, has no purchasing power. They can't do it, generally speaking. The last point is this, and probably the most important, is that of those 500,000 open jobs, most of them are in something other than pen testing, because this is an asymmetric issue, right? Offense is way easier than defense. It's the same reason that, the Bills games don't end in 0-0 ties every time. It's because, sorry, bad Bills one. The fact is that it's easier to score than it is to stop a score. And so smart people who are motivated and challenged by this industry and want to come up with new solutions and make some money and maybe get a little famous on this, they're going to do something that's harder, right? Something that hasn't been, a problem that hasn't been solved yet. Well, I would argue that even though some of these things have been standardized, right? Some of the NIST standards for even building an awareness program or assessing risk in an organization continue to evolve. You'd argue they're actually easier to do in some ways because of some of the history behind these things. The reality is, though, that organizations today have a lot more fixing and building to do than breaking. So think about this. We're back to Economics 101, supply and demand. If I've got lots of supply and pen testers and less demand, but I've got huge demand in things that are outside pen testing, what do you want to do? Right? Now, you may get into pen testing because you think you're a better pen tester than everyone else, like Tyler. It's a little inside joke, sorry. I was expecting a few more chuckles, but the reality is that we need smart people like you, motivated people like you, solving other problems. Right now, every business in America is broken. They're already broken. And so issuing them another findings report on other stuff that's broken is not so helpful right now. We need people who can build stuff and fix stuff, right? We need people who can help with prioritization, like helping organizations even start. I talk to COOs, CFOs, CEOs every week, every day almost. And most of them say, I'm not even sure where to start. I don't even really know what to do in cybersecurity. I've got a budget, and I think I've got some resources, and I know I've got pressure from my board, and I'm tired of being a headline. I'm just not sure what to do. Well, a pen test doesn't help them. It just gives them more things to do, but it doesn't tell them exactly what necessarily. It certainly doesn't tell them in what order, and it definitely doesn't tell them how much. Right? We need to be answering those questions. We need more people who can literally explain in a way that executives and businesses understand that you need to do cybersecurity. How many of your businesses or schools or whatever you do today are doing enough, are doing the right things? Anybody? Yeah, no, nobody. Okay, well, there's always one.
They try. Got to give them the benefit.
Nobody knows what they're doing. They don't know what to do, and they don't know how much to do. We need people to solve that problem. All right? Lastly is this. We got plenty of pen testers. We got a world-class pen testing team, but we need risk assessors. We need people who are part security guru and part psychologist that really understand the cognitive biases in the human brain and can help us figure out how to change behaviors in end users. Right? We need people who are experts in taking a program and applying that in different industries, healthcare, higher ed, retail, manufacturing. We don't need pen testers. We got tons of pen testers. And we get tons of pen testers applying. We need people who do other things. At Great Castle Security, I'm guessing we look very much like every one of our competitors in terms of our resources. Is that we filled our pen testing position real early because we found resources. Right? And we were able to satisfy the demand for those services. Today, We cannot keep up. We have 4 open positions. We hired 6 people in January. We hired 3 in February, I think 3 in March. We still have 4 open positions for everything but pen testing. You want a career? You're going to have to go somewhere else, at least temporarily, until pen testing sort of catches on. Maybe we standardize it. Maybe we figure out how to do this better. Or maybe organizations finally build a program and controls that are worth testing, so that when you get to findings and results and you slap that on the CFO's desk, they say, oh yeah, I get that. I understand that. That's going to help me budget for next year. Today we're not there. If you want a career, if you're starting a career or building a career the next 3 to 5 years, pen testing is not the place for you. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. I'm sure you... A golf clap. Appreciate the So I'm happy to take questions. I'm sure most of you have counterpoints. Let me have them. Let her rip. Yeah, go for it.
All right. So, now maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe I'm wrong. But
let's start out at that assumption.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but as I see it, I think that you're right. That if someone
maybe
is
you
a
are
penetration tester, just walks up to CEO and says, "Hey, here, you want a pen test?" and then just gives them a paper on it, it's not going to work. But I think that part of being a pen tester would be developing the social skills to help people that aren't pen testers understand what these results are and what they need to do with them. So I feel like the solution isn't necessarily to not be a pen tester, but to be a different kind of pen tester that would be able to help people who aren't pen testers to understand that kind of.
Interesting thought. I don't disagree. I will, by the way, before I leave this room, admit wholeheartedly that pen testing can be a valuable service to the right client at the right time under the right conditions. So let's get that out of the way. It's just that everything else around it today points in a different direction. You want to say something?
Well, to add to his point, like you were kind of saying, and I noticed it at my job, like sometimes the other departments like finance and HR and stuff demonize IT, and they don't want us anywhere in their process because they think we're just going to make it technical. So maybe a little bit to that is maybe pen testing does need to be a technically classified field, but maybe there just needs to be more of that collaboration between the non-technical departments and the IT.
And there are good pen testers out there that are doing good things, and if you sell a pen test the right way, you've already established that this is a business solution for a business problem. This is not an IT thing. But let's face it, there are plenty of hacks out there too that just want to pop a firewall, and it's
So over the summer I was working for a company, and they got a pen test, and I came back in December for them, and they had me review the pen test from this company. And one of the things that I noticed coming from the company was it was just a list of vulnerabilities. Didn't explain how to solve the issue. They didn't get to know the company because the company, and every company has a different priority. And I feel like if you want to change pen testing, you sort of need to do both.
Yep.
You need to understand that and really bring that forward.
So let me ask a couple of questions about that. So one, when you first looked at that findings document, did you have anything to compare it to know if it was good or bad?
No, unfortunately, I didn't have. They gave me like one previous paper, but it really wasn't good.
So did they?
So they used a tool where they found all the vulnerabilities and they just printed out the CD.
Did they just? Okay, so they just ran Nessus or something.
Like they called it a pen test, but really was like.
So here's another problem. We, the security industry, have done an absolutely horrible job educating people on the difference between an exploit and a vulnerability, right? Which is really the key difference in pen testing between a vulnerability scan or something else, some other assessment. But any business, they only have 5 things worth protecting. Were those 5 things in the report? Like, this is what we were going after, this is what we compromised, here's the impact? Probably not. But any business only has 5 things. Money, if you got a bank account, you got something worth protecting. You have identities, you got people worth protecting. You have credit card information. Do you have a reputation? And do you have intellectual property? If your pen test, if someone asks you to do a pen test, or if your pen test today is going after anything but those 5, then you're wasting your time because it's not meaningful to the business. Those are the only things that a business cares about losing. Now, maybe you do something targeted, and you may have a smaller scope where you're going after an application or something more atomic, but the reality is you got to be able to translate that into one of those 5 things, or the impact, the potential impact to one of those 5 things. Otherwise, it's meaningless to the business, because if the business is smart and they're building an effective cybersecurity program, those are the only 5 things they're protecting. We don't care about iPhones and networks and firewalls. That stuff they're just hammers. Like, they could be egg timers. They're hamster wheels. It doesn't matter. All we care about is data. So we got to make sure that, we understand that that's what a pen test is about. Yep.
So, do you think that this is the only reason for sort of the lack of take in pen testing? I'd like to bring up a counterpoint that I think in the pen testing industry, especially in this area, is oversaturated with people who are doing it cheaper and generally the same. There are really good pen testing firms. Ray Castle does good work, but I would think that sort of these cheap wholesale, sort of not great quality pen tests is what's sort of making this much more difficult for a firm who takes pride in what they do and thus has a higher overhead
Sure.
than a firm that's
Yeah.
just
So we do compete. Absolutely. We compete with pen tests that come in on a fax machine, $2,500 for a pen test. That happens. Our clients are seeing the same things. Now, I would argue that in a capitalist market, that there's nothing wrong with that. If someone can sell a pen test for $2,500 and make money on that, God bless you. The issue is that the industry is so young that we haven't yet defined. There's not like an established standard about what a pen test should be. And so if I have a $2,500 pen test and an $18,000 pen test, and I don't know the difference, I'm going to save my money. I'm going to buy the $2,500. That's not really the fault of anyone. It's just that this industry is so immature right now. We don't have a way to compare those two, and so you can't make an educated decision. Something up here? Yes, sir.
No, it's this guy.
Wait, hold on.
You want me to go?
Well, he had his hand raised
Yeah,
first.
no,
I don't know
go
if he's
ahead.
going to pass to you. It's whatever you guys want to do.
You start, go ahead.
Okay. All right. First of all,
You're sure? Because we can let him go.
No. All right. Assuming that we take everything you say to heart, and we want to start right today, switch into risk assessment.
Yep.
What transferable skills do we have? What can we do to make that pivot, and what would we need to do, to get into that new mindset?
So 33% of an organization's cybersecurity program is technology. If your background is technical, you're already off to a good start in that area. Risk, though, is simple math, likelihood and impact. It's not like pen testing where there's a whole pile of technical skills, and you got to understand scripting, you got to understand, there's a lot of things that go into that. Risk assessment, I would say, at the surface at least, is actually a simpler function because it's basic math. Now, obviously, being a good risk assessor means you understand frequency versus volume, and you understand the difference between a vulnerability-based risk assessment and an asset-based. So there's a lot more to it than just likelihood and impact. But your skills transfer almost directly, at least partially. But isn't learning part of the fun? Doing something new? And by the way, the fact that if it is hard to go from pen testing to risk assessing, that just means that fewer people are going to do it. The value of those individuals who do accomplish that is going to go up because there are fewer of them. And so it continues to be a good story. Yeah, the tall guy in the back.
So, full disclosure, Reg and I have worked together in the past until we got into a Filipino-style knife fight in the office and decided to part ways. So, I think also, full disclosure, I had seen basically this talk ahead of time so I could get my thoughts together. The number one, so first, pen testing, very nebulous term, you know what I mean? Let's talk more about offensive security and actually exploiting the vulnerability to identify. That cannot go away because there are operational issues that you cannot identify through risk assessments or vulnerability assessments. And so I'll give a very, very simple example, but if you want to show up to my talk as well, I'll show you a very specific technical example. And this specific thing has happened at places. You analyze the physical security system that you have in place and all the configuration you need and alerts and the right people and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, if somebody forgets to turn it on when they leave and somebody just comes in, those are things that you can't necessarily identify. Make sense?
Yep, absolutely, and I completely agree. One more question. Yeah.
I think it's more of a statement. I mean, the paradigm you're looking for is a shift. You're not saying that there isn't a place for pen testing. I think that's where you're getting a lot of resistance. People they're not really understanding that.
Yeah. Obviously, this was intentionally provocative because I want to get people thinking about stuff. Absolutely.
We all bitch about the fact that the people that have the money to make the decisions, we give them the information, we complain, we say we're vulnerable, you've got this problem, nobody listens to us. The problem is that you're trying to fill the gap between the people that know where the vulnerabilities are and the people that have the money to make a decision.
It's partially
It's
that.
all about finding an overlap, and it's not replacing penetration. It's just adding another tool to the toolbox that allows us to convey the information in a digestible manner.
It's partially that. It's all these other things too. But certainly, if you want to actually manage risk at an entity, you're going to need some money. You're going to need some resources. You're going to need some time. And if you can't demonstrate value, if you can't sell this thing, then you're not going to get any of those things. And then we've all lost. So, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.